Okay, so we're always talking about staying informed, right,
Mm-hmm.
about what's happening globally. And, well, things are getting pretty intense in Tamaulipas, Mexico.
Yeah, especially in those border towns near Texas.
Exactly. It's gotten to a point where the U.S. government has taken some pretty unprecedented steps.
It's true. We're not just talking about, like increased risks or anything. We're
Right.
talking about a full-on level 4 do not travel advisory from the U.S. consulate for the entire state.
For the entire
The
state.
whole thing. And that's the highest level of warning they give. It's only for situations where it's like really extreme danger.
Wow. So they're really serious about this. It sounds like they're basically saying, don't even think about going there right now,
Yeah,
No casual trips across the border.
exactly.
So what exactly are they warning people about?
They're mentioning a few things specifically: gun battles,
Oh,
kidnappings, and even IEDs.
IEDs. Wow. So this isn't just like petty crime,
No, this is serious, organized crime.
It's pretty scary to think about, honestly.
Yeah.
The kind of firepower and, well, ruthlessness these groups have.
Yeah.
I mean, for the consulate to issue such a blanket warning for the whole state, it's got to be a really bad situation.
It is, and it's even worse than it sounds. The advisory says not to travel outside daylight hours, anywhere in the state,
Really?
and to avoid all dirt roads, the whole state.
So, like, the danger isn't even confined to any specific areas
Yeah.
or times of day.
Nope. Seems like it's everywhere, all the time.
Man, that's a really grim picture for anyone who lives there or has to travel there. Do we have any idea, any insights into what's causing this sudden surge in violence?
Well, the advisory itself doesn't go into details,
Right.
but it's hard to ignore what's going on there.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Well, Tamaulipas has always been like a battleground for cartels.
Right.
They're fighting for those drug trafficking routes into the U.S.
Which are very lucrative.
Very. So this latest escalation, it could be a power struggle, maybe a new group trying to take over, or maybe existing factions are just fighting over territory.
So this is a situation with some pretty big international implications. This isn't just Mexico's problem, right? This affects the U.S. too.
Absolutely. The violence in Tamaulipas, it's all tied up with border security and illegal immigration.
Right, of course.
The cartels, they make money from the flow of people and drugs over the border, and they'll use violence to protect that.
And that violence, unfortunately, it spills over into the U.S.
Definitely.
We see it all the time. Cartel-related crime in border towns and the effects of the drug trade spreading throughout the country.
Exactly. It's a complicated problem. No easy answers.
No, definitely not. But the U.S. government is trying to address it. But their recent crackdown on illegal immigration, especially with the current administration, it's caused a lot of debate about whether it's working and what the consequences might be.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic.
Speaking of the crackdown, did you hear about that immigration raid in New York City?
Oh, yeah, with Secretary Noam.
Yeah. The Homeland Security Secretary, it seems like they're really taking an aggressive stance on enforcing those immigration laws. What can you tell us about that raid?
Well, first of all, it took place in a sanctuary city.
Right. A jurisdiction that doesn't really cooperate with federal immigration efforts.
Exactly. But Secretary Noam made it very clear. The administration is going to remove dangerous individuals from the streets.
Regardless of local policies.
Exactly. No matter what.
So they're sending a message. They're not going to let these sanctuary city policies get in their way. What happened in the raid? What were the results?
They apprehended a bunch of people who were in the country illegally, including one with some really serious charges.
Like what?
Kidnapping,
Oh, wow.
assault, and burglary.
Yikes.
Secretary Noam actually highlighted that case, to emphasize the administration's focus.
On removing people who are a real danger to the public.
Right. Public safety is the priority.
It definitely sounds like this raid was part of a bigger strategy. Didn't Tom Homan, the border czar, talk about a massive deportation operation?
He did. He was very clear about it.
What was the plan?
The plan was to remove individuals who are public safety threats.
So people with criminal records.
Especially them, yeah. It's different from past administrations. They used to focus on undocumented immigrants who committed minor offenses.
Okay.
Or even no criminal record at all. This administration is focused on the people they think are the biggest risk to American communities.
So let's recap. We have this escalating violence in Tamaulipas tied to these powerful criminal organizations. They're driving illegal immigration, impacting the U.S., and the U.S. government is stepping up their efforts to enforce immigration laws, deport people they consider dangerous. How do you see all of this playing out? What's going to happen, especially with the violence across the border?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
It's tough to say for sure what the impact of, more enforcement and deportations will be. It could, discourage people from trying to cross illegally,
Okay.
potentially weaken the cartels if their operations get disrupted.
So it could be a good thing.
It might be, but
But there's always another side to the coin.
always.
What are the downsides
Yeah.
to this approach?
Well, if you crack down on illegal immigration but don't address, the root causes.
Right, the reasons why people are leaving their homes in the first place.
Exactly. Poverty, violence in Central America.
Yeah.
If you don't address that, people might just be forced to take even more dangerous routes.
Yeah, that plays right into the cartel's hands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's complicated. There's no easy fix.
No, there never is.
It makes you think, what happens to those people caught in the middle of all this?
It's heartbreaking, really, to think about the choices they're facing.
I know.
Fleeing desperate situations, risking their lives, their families' lives,
Yeah.
just for a chance at something better. And the journey itself is so dangerous, often controlled by these ruthless criminals.
It's true. It reminds you that there are real people behind these headlines,
Right.
these policy debates. These aren't just numbers.
They're people with their own stories, their own dreams.
Yeah. People don't just decide to cross borders illegally, on a whim.
No, of course not.
They're driven by fear, desperation. They want safety, opportunity.
It's easy to get lost in the politics of it all.
It is.
But we can't forget about the human cost. These are families, individuals,
Absolutely.
and they're stuck in a system that can feel very, dehumanizing.
Very much so. And even if they make it across,
They're still not safe.
they're still living in fear. They could be caught, deported.
At any time.
And that fear, it keeps them from, accessing services.
Healthcare, education.
Yeah. It makes them even more vulnerable.
It's like a vicious cycle. They're fleeing one dangerous situation only to end up in another.
Right. And often they're exploited by the same criminal networks they were trying to escape.
It's crazy. So to really fix this, you need to do more than just beef up security.
Exactly. You need a more comprehensive approach.
One that looks at why people are migrating in the first place.
Yeah. The root causes, not just the symptoms.
So where does all this leave us? We've talked about the dangers in Tamaulipas, the complexities of illegal immigration, and the U.S. government's response. What does this all mean for the average American? Why should they care about what's happening down there?
That's a good question. And it's one everyone listening should ask themselves. What happens on the border, it doesn't stay on the border.
What do you mean?
It affects us all, our economy, our national security, our communities.
Can you give us some examples of
Yeah.
how it impacts people in the U.S. directly?
Sure. Think about the opioid epidemic.
Yeah, it's devastated so many communities.
A lot of the heroin and fentanyl that's fueling that crisis, it comes across the border.
From Mexico.
Controlled by the same cartels operating in Tamaulipas.
That's scary. So the violence and instability in Mexico,
Yeah.
it really does impact safety here.
It does. And it's not just the drug trade. All the resources going towards border security, that impacts other things too.
Like what?
Legal immigration, trade, and it just makes the political debates even more heated, more divisive, which makes it harder to find solutions that actually work.
It's true. Immigration is such a complex issue. People have really strong feelings about it.
They do.
It's easy to get caught up in the rhetoric, but we need to approach these conversations with, empathy, a willingness to understand other perspectives.
I agree. Critical thinking is so important here. We need to look past the emotional arguments, the sound bites.
Get to the facts.
Exactly. Think about the consequences, the human impact of the policies we're making.
It's about recognizing that there are nuances, that there's no easy answer when it comes to immigration. No black and white.
It's messy, and we need to be able to talk about it even when it's uncomfortable.
And we need to remember that everyone involved is a human being.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, we need to find solutions that are effective, but also compassionate. Solutions that address the root causes, keep the border secure, and uphold our values as a nation. We've covered a lot today.
We have.
The dangers in Tamaulipas, the complexities of illegal immigration, the U.S. government's response. Is there anything else you think our listeners should keep in mind as they think about all of this?
I think, it's important to remember the human side of this.
Right.
All these headlines, statistics, policies,
Yeah.
there are real people behind all of that.
It's so true. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture and forget about that. The human cost.
It's about seeing the individuals, the families, the communities.
the people whose lives are being directly affected.
We need to remember their dignity, their humanity.
Absolutely. These aren't just numbers,
Mhm.
or political talking points. These are real lives
Exactly.
with hopes, dreams, facing challenges most of us can't even imagine
It's about recognizing that and acknowledging that we have a responsibility.
as individuals and as a society.
Yeah. To engage with these issues thoughtfully,
Yeah.
compassionately.
We need to stay informed, stay engaged,
Definitely.
and be willing to challenge our own assumptions, our own
You
biases,
need to demand solutions that get to the root of the problem.
not just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. This has been really insightful, a lot to think about.
My pleasure.
And for our listeners, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've discussed the dangers in Tamaulipas, the risks people take to cross the border, the reasons why they make those choices, and how complex immigration policy really is. But imagine just for a moment that you're in a situation so desperate, so dangerous, that you feel like you have no other choice but to leave everything behind, to risk your life, your family's lives, to go to the place you don't even know. What would have to be happening for you to feel like that was your only option? What would make that risk seem worthwhile? Think about that. It challenges us to see things from a different perspective, to empathize with people who are going through things we can't even imagine, and to think about the kind of world we want to live in, the kind of world we want to leave for our children. That's all for today. Until next time, keep diving deep.